Okay, here we go.
Test, 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 test.
Roll music?
Let's roll it.
Welcome to the Unknown Morning Show.
It's the show where we explore radio,
Podcasting,
TV,
gear,
gearheads,
and making money with a hot mic.
This is the Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
And I'm Chuck McKinley. Anyway, here we are working on episode 1, so to speak. And I was thinking that, origin stories fascinate me because you kind of get this idea of whether it's personal or professional, how our lives are formed.
Yes.
And, or put it this way, when you think about your past and you go, you know what, if I took left instead of right, everything would have been different.
Amen. Amen.
But for right now, I'm glad I took the turns that I did. I'm right here, and it ends up, for right now, the Unknown Morning Show.
You know what's funny about that, Chuck, is that the first time you and I worked together was one building down.
Sure.
It was right here on Chase Drive.
Yeah.
And the way life comes full circle sometimes is fascinating to me. But yeah, the building we're in now is the Cozad Insurance Building. And we're like upstairs in what I think once was a counselor's office. It's become a podcast studio.
Yeah.
And yet, literally 2 doors down is where East Texas Radio Group was when you and I first worked together at 104.1 The Rant.
And this is kind of like, Radio Row, because down the block there's more radio facilities, and they're up the block, so to speak.
Like right across the parking lot.
Exactly. So, things are different for everybody, Mandy. I mean, sometimes I've heard when people really not so much got their start, but their interest in radio. Maybe they had it in the family. Their dad owned the station. What prompted you to get into the business?
Well, I was a senior in high school whenever I started, and it was kind of a funny thing. My mom worked with somebody who was friends with a DJ, Paula Prince.
Okay.
And Paula's friend, working with my mom, worked nights, or days and nights at Texas Eastman. She worked rotating shifts. These women were talking about life a lot when they weren't working. And I would come up a lot that I was like this precocious, conscientious, I guess, dare I say, talented kid.
You still are.
Thank you.
But you're not a kid anymore.
Well,
okay.
Sometimes. But anyway, I would come up in conversation, and I loved music. I listened to the radio a lot.
Sure.
I was a fan. They were trying to think of a way to get me involved without telling me to, because I was also a pretty stubborn kid, kind of doing my own thing and whatever. Anyhow, so it came to light that they were going to have me come cut a public service announcement for the DARE program.
Okay.
At KOKX, where Paula worked. So that was the original intention. I was going to go, because I was a DARE role model. I was a kid that didn't do drugs. And I would speak to younger kids about not doing that. That was the initial thing that was going to happen. But a political thing happened at the school in the meantime, where our superintendent was going to change the way grades were weighted for advanced classes.
Okay.
You had to pass the test in order to get the additional weighting for your grade.
Okay.
That was something the teachers didn't want to happen. It was something I didn't want to happen. And it wasn't going to affect me, but it was going to affect the incoming freshmen when I was a senior. So I'm trying to tell this succinctly. It's a hard story to tell succinctly. I went to the school board meeting when this was announced because I was prompted to by one of my teachers as a journalism student, air quotes.
Did you get Norma Ray on them?
I did. So I couldn't speak at this meeting because I wasn't on the agenda. You're not allowed to.
Really?
Yeah, that's how that works. If you're not on the agenda for this type of meeting, then you
Did you ask for an exception?
No, I did not. I took notes. I left, and then I was so appalled by what I heard, I started calling school board members. And then I called the Longview News Journal.
Well.
So anyway, that all happened. And
Mrs.
so the public,
Bernstein.
I know, the public service announcement ended up being about attending your local school board meetings because you never know what might need to come to light.
Okay.
Anyhow, that got me in the door. And Gary Mason ended up hiring me to run.
God bless you, Gary.
Yeah. Football. College football programs. Somebody had to insert the local commercials for those sponsorships.
That's how we all get started.
That was my first gig.
Running the board.
That and then church services before eventually Super Bowl Sunday 2002 was my first day on a mic live on the air.
IDs or time checks or both?
All of it. I had to have content too, but it was but I mean I had easy content. It was Super Bowl Sunday, so at least once an hour I talked about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you have to fill 60 seconds or something?
Probably less than that.
Okay.
Typically, it was mostly call letters in, call letters out. And,
Absolutely.
Hi, it's Mandee Montana. It's Super Bowl Sunday. Here's Blake Shelton. I mean, it was pretty basic, but I was still shaking at the knees the first day.
Oh, I remember my first show, and when I was growing up in Minnesota. I mean, it was the overnight shift. I ended up doing nights, but then I had the typical Sunday thing, which was, all the religious programs from 6 a to 12 noon.
Yep.
They had to be exactly on time, and if they weren't, you would hear about it.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember one of the guys did something where at 12 noon he cut off the church service.
Uh-oh.
Which always leads me to, as I always tell young broadcasters, remember, we never cut God off.
Oh, no.
We don't do that.
No.
Did you have a point where you said, I want to pursue this, or you're still in high school and you said, this sounds like something I'd like to do forever?
Not in high school. I have felt like in my life, there have been multiple times where a door is opened, so to speak.
Sure.
And I know to walk through it. In high school, I was having fun with this. I ended up with a presidential scholarship at Kilgore College. So I was going to school for free.
Okay.
But also continued to work at the radio station part-time.
I never knew that. That's terrific.
You didn't know that?
I didn't know that
yeah,
one.
Smart kid. Yeah. And I lost it because I tried to do too much. At one point that year, my first year, I was taking 19 hours, working at the radio station part-time, waitressing at a diner on the interstate, and working at McAllister's Deli.
Oh, man.
19 hours is 7 hours more than a full load.
Wow.
Yeah, it was too much. And I lost it because I made a C in Spanish 2, which was an elective I did not need. I should have dropped that class, but I didn't. The irony of that then is that I went on to be a part of the Flair staff, which was the Kilgore College newspaper, the next year because I had a journalism background, and I ended up getting paid to go to school. Where with my presidential scholarship, it covered everything, but I actually worked on the Flair staff, had a journalism scholarship, so I made money the second year that I was at school.
So
instead of paying for college.
When you were, so you were at KYKX. Did you get to a point where you did other things there, or?
Yeah, I did anything they would pay me to do there, basically.
It's mercenary DJ stuff, sure.
At one point.
Do you have free coffee and will you pay me?
Yeah. I did. I filled out like paper affidavits for, what do you call that? I forget what kind of programming that would be called. Syndicated.
Yes.
Thank you. Syndicated programming.
But it's horrible. I know. Whenever I had to do them, I just hated it. Even when they were online and you could do it through the computer.
Boxes. Yeah.
I just hated it.
I mean, it was tedious work, but I was in college, so I was listening to alternative rock on their like broadband internet out of Northern California while I was filling out affidavits. So I was using the high-speed internet and
KNAC?
No, it was called
KLOS.
It was called Live 103. Or no, Live 105. Live 105.
I've heard of that station.
Yeah.
No,
Live 105.
When I heard about the station, I'll say this real quick. Two guys ran it, and basically they used their own music and built it, and it got some really, really great reviews.
Yeah, it was a great station. I really enjoyed it, and occasionally my friends that I met at that time, they were in a punk rock band called The Matches. Occasionally the Matches would get played on Live 105, and people from the Bay Area where they were from in Northern California would be calling in, but I could listen in East Texas because the internet was new. Like that was all new stuff back then. So I don't know. So when I was filling out affidavits, I was listening to stuff like that. And so it wasn't hell. It wasn't fun, but it wasn't hell. I made it fun because I was listening to whatever, and the speakers were amazing in the production studios where I would sit and work. Yeah. So I could, I was up there probably 7:00 at night. Nobody was around. I would just blare music in the production room while I was filling out affidavits. I was a punk kid.
I love empty radio stations.
I do too. That's one of the things I miss about being in radio is like a Sunday afternoon empty radio station. Just be there by myself. It feels like church to me. Probably because I ran so much religious programming when I was young.
Sure.
It feels like church.
I always have this thing when I walk into the radio station every day, I kind of just mumble this to myself. Here begins another day. And I tell friends, I said, you never know when it's going to be your last day doing the job.
That's true.
And I've pretty much thought since about 97 when radio started getting the big conglomerates buying stations, I've always assumed my last gig was my last gig, but as Pacino said, it keeps pulling me back.
Oh, man. I feel like I'm pulled back in through this. My last full-time gig was at Town Square Media, and then about 2 years after that, I went back part-time with them for about 6 or 7 months, and it just, it didn't work out the way that we wanted it to on both sides.
Yeah.
But we stayed friends, and then I started the podcast, the other podcast that I do, and now this one. And
well, you brought up one thing of staying friends. It is really, really, really important. I mean, I in my 47 years in radio, I've only had one instance where I got sideways with a radio station owner. This is in West Virginia, WQBE. But other than that, I've always, say please and thank you, and whether they're firing me or I'm leaving or whatever, it's always on good terms. I always try to make it that way. So, in case you need those people again for anything like a reference, you can call and say, hey, remember me?
I got to say that's something that you shared with me early on when I worked with you, because my first full-time gig was with you and with Bob and Tom and the ranch, and Amy was across the hall, but in the building with us. And when I left KYKX to come work with you guys, there was a little bit of contention.
Yeah.
Because I had been a really reliable part-timer for them for, at that point, 3 years.
So you were doing a couple weekend shows and what, production during the week, right?
Yeah, production during the week.
How many hours, by the way?
I think, what would a part-timer, maybe like 30 to 35 hours, because they were really watching me. They wanted to keep me under a certain amount of hours.
Oh, they were saying like if it got to 39, go home. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But
30 hours, that's a load. And it makes you really, really valuable.
Yeah, there were lots of things where I happened to be the person in the building and something wouldn't be correct. And so I would suddenly learn how to do whatever it was, because I was already in the building at the time. And we didn't have those capabilities, especially early on when that was 2002 to 2005. We just didn't have the same capabilities of working from home that we do now. Most of us had dial-up internet back then at the house.
Yeah.
So there was broadband connections at the studios.
Sure.
And I had a track phone for the first couple of years. Remember those prepaid cell phones back in the day?
Did you have a flip?
I had a Nokia, with a little, gray screen and, digitized letters and stuff. It had the full keypad. There was no keyboard with letters. You had to type 1 3 times to get the letter C or whatever,
Yeah, I hated that. Yeah, I had
the original texting.
It's
like Morse code.
Yeah. I had the flip phone, and it was in 2006 when I got my program director title at the ranch. My wife said, you may want to get a cell phone just in case they need you for an emergency. And I said, I don't really want to. Mm-hmm. You can take pictures with this. And I said, oh, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Taking pictures of the phone. I said, that's stupid. That's insane, Rosanna, insane. And then, but she's also the one that said years before, you need to program a station. I was like, it's for young people. And I'm not young anymore. And I don't have that stamina. And then she was say, you need to do news. And I go, now you're talking stupid. So,
and here we are.
That's right. I work at a news station and producing stories and, running the afternoon news block from 5 to 6. So, but that's the other thing too, that I would tell any young person getting into radio: expect the unexpected, be flexible. I've had friends tell me, that are out of the business, I just want to do music radio. And I said, well, that ship has sailed. That's gone.
There are very few jobs there. Even if you're really talented, they keep cutting them. They keep putting the same voices on multiple stations. And, kudos to those people that are willing to do that work. It's not easy work either. You have to do a different level of show prep.
Sure.
To do the syndicated thing.
Sure.
And it's hard. I did it for a short period of time for Town Square. I was kind of like their swing person.
Because you were doing about 6 shows a day, right?
At one point, yeah.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. And it was fun. But those were all localized. That wasn't syndication. It was where I was show prepping for 6 different shows a day and recording 6 different shows a day. I got into a rhythm where it was possible, but it was challenging.
Sure.
It was fun, though. If I could do that, just that, and get paid, I would do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But the way that their stations and their job descriptions are now, they require a lot more writing. And I said it earlier. I did journalism in high school and college. I'm a talented writer. I am. I'm a talented writer. I'm a talented jock. I'm not trying to sound arrogant when I say that. It's just I'm confident in my abilities. I am. I have those skills. However, the type of writing that they were wanting me to do over there was it wasn't journalism. It was like clickbait. And I hate to say that because I love my friends that are over there and they know what they're doing. But, the idea is to get numbers. It's not to produce compelling content.
You've worked classic country and you've worked contemporary rock and roll radio. Do you have a music preference? I mean, or is it just, hey, whatever pays the bills sometimes?
As far as being on the air?
Yeah.
Well, I've never got to do the one thing that I want to do.
What's
so
that?
If that opportunity arises, I'll do it. Alternative rock is my favorite music.
Okay.
Let's see. Gosh, that station's not there anymore. I almost said it, but it's gone. The Edge in Dallas. I used to listen to that a lot.
Okay.
102.1 The Edge. Now it's like Star 102.1. I don't know, something. But that station went away. Alt 103.7 is the new alternative rock in Dallas. I love that, though. I've never had the opportunity to be on an alt rock station. In fact, I had a whole other moniker. I had a whole other name for myself if I was ever going to do it. I was going to be Samantha Adams. Go by Sam Adams on the
Sam Adams. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep. If I ever did it, I was going to be Samantha.
I've always had this idea in my head, Mandee, if somebody came to me and said, we have a classic country station we want you to fix, or a classic rocker, I'd go in a second.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, when Rick Guest asked me to program KKUS, and I said, is there any money in this? He goes, no. And I said, okay, fine. And so
we had fun.
We had fun. We also had a deal. I mean, for me, it was, at that time, the radio station was syndicated. It was half Westwood 1 from 6A or 6P to 6A, and then live from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Local programming.
Yeah, local programming. And the problem that I felt is that Westwood 1 played older classic country, and I felt that things had to be evened out. And I also felt that we could also be newer classic country and provide a mix. And because I would say, I get it. It's classic country. It's for the older 50 crowd, but I think the responsibility is to get as many butts in the seats as possible. And that's what I looked at as playing, yes, we're going to play Hank Sr., but we're also going to play Garth. We're going to play Trisha Yearwood. We're going to get Reba in there. I would say, yes, we'll always play Coal Miner's Daughter. Maybe maybe we're going. And I had rotations for artists, and then I'd have sub rotations, and you'd maybe move them down. A couple times a year, I'd break everything out on paper and start looking at the math and go, what does this look like? How's everything feeling? And then, go from there. I always thought it was important to shake things up a little bit. And I didn't play just 300 songs. It would just nothing drives me crazier than getting to work at 9 a.m. and hearing the classic rocker play, Pour Some Sugar on Me. And the next night at 6 o'clock, it's like that. Because it's no.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, it's a great song. People do want to hear it. But when you've got all of this hit music at your disposal.
Especially the classic type thing.
Exactly.
We talk about making money with the mic, so to speak.
Yeah.
You've been venturing into other things. You still use these skills, whether it's public speaking on your side gigs.
Yep.
But you also have gotten into TV. What is that like? How does that feel?
Are we going to go there?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You're a TV star. We want to hear about this.
I would not say a TV star. I've only done 4 interviews, but I was approached, I guess, summer of 2023.
Okay.
The way this all came about was just kind of a random thing, too. It wasn't something I pursued. They called me. One of the side gigs that I do is for my other podcast, Celebrating Women. I have a sponsor, Hand and Stone Massage and Facial Spa.
Okay.
That's a relationship that I developed while I was in radio. I endorsed them, got to know them. And then when I left radio, the owner there, the franchisee, Mike, said, hey, if you ever do a podcast, let me know. I want to sponsor it.
That's awesome.
I know. I was very flattered and very appreciative and grateful that he would even offer. Well, then when I started the podcast, Ashley and I had a few episodes in and live, and I went to Mike and I said, hey, you told me if I ever did this, you'd want to sponsor it. Do you want to sponsor it? And he said yes. And so he's been our sponsor for almost a year now on that podcast. But he asked me if I would be willing to go in one day and appear on television on behalf of Hand and Stone to give a testimony for him. He couldn't go he needed to send somebody.
Sure.
And he already had it booked. And
so you were with somebody with Hand and Stone?
That particular day, I just went as a representative. I didn't have anybody with me. I was by myself.
Okay.
And so I went over to KATK, and Andrew, is it?
Samet.
I knew it started with an S. Andrew Samet was...
He's their weather guy.
Yeah, he interviewed me. talking about, the benefits of being a member at Hand and Stone and the different things that I like. It was about a 2-minute interview. And I had the camera guy take a picture of me behind the desk at the station and send it to my husband. Like, hey, I'm going to be on TV, right? Because it's not something that most people get to do. So I sent it to him. Unbeknownst to me, he sends this picture to his friends that he used to work with. He was in media sales at CBS 19 for a long time.
Okay.
He sends the photo of me to them and says, don't let KETK hire her. I had no idea any of this happened until months later. We happened to be at Cattle Barons spending time socially with the guys from CBS 19. And they're like, we thought about you as a morning anchor. And I looked at them and I was like, why? Like, what? They're like, well, the position was open and we thought, I wonder if Mandee would be into that, but we didn't call. And I was like, well, I mean, no, I don't want to do mornings, but thank you. That's a very flattering statement because I've never done TV.
Mornings are just so
they're
hard.
brutal. I mean, you got to be up at like 2 a.m. And you got to be pretty. Like unlike radio where you can be makeup free like I am right now.
Yeah.
And the difference between like TV news and broadcast radio, you can't do like endorsements on TV if you are an anchor or a reporter because it impedes your journalistic integrity. So anything that is related to sales has to be done by somebody that is not delivering the news.
Sure.
They wanted me to be the person who is not delivering the news that could do a sponsored interview for either local or regional people. So in October, I did my first interview that was sponsored. I did a couple of them with some like insurance medical providers, and then I did a couple that were local here in town.
Okay.
But it was a surprisingly easy transition. I was nervous. I was scared. I was afraid of the way I would look and the way I would appear on camera. I think that's kind of a common thing for most people.
Sure.
But it was a natural. I will say the thing that clicked in my mind that made it easier for me.
What?
Was the first on location shoot that we did.
Okay.
So I have I'm doing an interview and it's 2 minutes is how much time I have. So for years in radio, what I did to make extra income, they would sell live broadcast remotes. So at a live broadcast remote, you're there, you've got 60 seconds. Oftentimes you're trading a mic with someone and you're asking them questions about the promotion that they're running while you're there, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Okay.
It was exactly the same thing, except there was a camera.
Did you have to handle your own gear?
No, I didn't have to handle any gear. I got to be a star. It was like, what the heck is happening? The local sales manager is there. He's giving me countdown hand signals with time. So I'm not having to stare. Well, I couldn't stare at a stopwatch like I could in radio, right? Because that would be on camera.
Sure.
There's 2 cameramen running 2 different cameras. My job, which was so easy for me and I loved so much, was just to flatter the person that I was with, make them feel comfortable, and ask them questions about themselves. It was easy. For 2 minutes, I get to tell this person how lovely they are.
Cool.
How great their store is, and ask them how to invite somebody to come in and shop there. It was so lovely.
So when you finished that, did you say to yourself, yes, I could do this every day?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
In fact, the local sales manager that was working kind of as a producer for me, Garrett, I got to the end of it and I got a short answer out of the person I was interviewing, and I knew we still had time to fill. So I started making something up along the lines of the wording for Boot Barn was the client. I think I said something like, this is the best place to shop this holiday season. Boot Barn, the spirit of American West, or something like that. Like I knew I needed to drag it.
Sure.
And so we got done and he starts laughing and he's like, man, I sure am glad you were in radio. You know how to fill time.
I
thought, man, I do. Yeah, toe dragging, like the NFL when you're making the catch. You got to keep both feet in.
Yeah, okay. Just remember, we're semi-professional here. And I always tell people that have time issues, I live in a world where a millisecond is late. Late is late. It does not matter. Time is unforgiving, period. And it does not stop either.
I'm laughing because when we worked together early in my career,
yes,
you would call yourself a time freak. And I was supposed to be at the station by 9, and often I would come in about 9:15, and then it stretched to 9:30. But I learned that if McDonald's took a while, because for years I would have a sausage, egg, and cheese McMuffin and a large Diet Coke, and I did it every day. But if the line was long and I got there at like 9:20 or 9:30 instead of like 9:15, I knew where your threshold was. Then I'd have an iced tea for you as well.
I don't know if you remember the time you'd bring an iced tea, and this is what I said. If you keep going like this, you better bring me breakfast.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure you actually did bring breakfast to me once. Food is currency in broadcasting. KKUS wasn't the only time we worked together. It was really different, though, the second time around.
Not to go too much in the weeds on this, but when I left East Texas Radio Group in 2011, I left to go do traffic. Not traffic like on-air traffic, but like traffic as in, scheduling commercials and assisting sales. I did that. That's what I left and went to the Blaze in 99.3 to do. And when I did it, there was some management at East Texas Radio Group that felt that I was breaking a non-compete. So I had to kind of go through a little bit of conversations via letters from attorneys. They sent me a cease and desist.
Yeah.
So I had a friend that was an attorney at the time, and I did some legal assisting for him on the side to pay for him to write a letter for me. And once I sent that letter to them, that was sort of my version of cease and desist to leave me alone.
Sure. Because
I really wasn't on the air. I was in the background. I was, learning another aspect of the business, which I was perfectly fine with, and worked for she's Shelly Rogers now. At the time, she was Shelly Miller. She was our business manager. She taught me how to do all of that. And because of my experience on air, I knew how everything fit together.
Yeah.
So it was interesting. And then for a very short period of time, I think 6 months after my non-compete ended, Luscious Ice had me do middays actually on the Blaze. He had started with a Saturday midday show just to kind of see how that would work. And then they let the midday girl go that had been working for them, and she was a bit of a flake. And then I slid into that slot, and then that's when Johnny Lathrop at Town Square heard me, and he was like, "Do you want to come work for Mix?" And honestly, Mix was my favorite radio station, had been. I mean, there's not an alternative rock station in Tyler. So second to that, pop music is probably my favorite.
Sure.
And, Mix used to be on 107.3 and eventually transitioned to 93.1, went through an 80s, 90s phase, and is now a, contemporary pop station again. That was my favorite station, and had listened to Lucky Larry since I was like 12 years old and was a big fan, and got to work with him for 6 years and have immense respect for him. He's a great broadcaster and great person, a great friend, great dad. He's a good dude.
He's been there about 20 years. Didn't he have his 20 years?
He's had his 20 years.
Yeah.
He's, I think, probably getting close to 25. Actually, no. He's done 20. He's 25, because when we did the last Children's Miracle Network Radiothon, Larry invites me to come back and help with that for those 2 days each year, which is such a, I'm so grateful for, because I care so deeply about all of that. That was 25 years of the Radiothon.
Wow.
So yeah, it was my 10th year with the Radiothon, his 25th.
Well, and you've got to do the job, and it's just one of the nice things about working with a family radio station, because Paul Gleiser owns KTBB,
right,
is that generally speaking, you're not going to sit there every October, November and start worrying about, the budget.
What's corporate going to do?
What's corporate going to do in New York or L.A.?
Yeah.
When I lost my job at the ranch, the old saying goes, I know where it is. But when I lost it, came down to where in the chain, there was 2 country stations and 2 country programmers, and they basically said, well, why do you need 2 of them?
And they picked the wrong one.
Yeah. Oh, no. And what I should have just said is, well, I'm the most successful one running the most successful station. But, you can't fight it, and there's nothing you can do when they say you're gone.
Right.
I mean, it was funny because I get the internal memo that says, "Can you come to the office, Chuck?" And then I go and we shut the door, and about that time I go, "Oh God, I've been in this rodeo before, and it sucks."
And I think somebody took me out of the office that day when it happened. Like, they took me to lunch.
Yeah.
Somebody unusual, because you and I had lunch and coffee together frequently. We were work buddies. Jenny used to call us the Wonder Twins.
Yes,
because we worked so well together. And I can't remember I don't remember if it was Rod. It might have been Rod that said, "Hey, let's go to Whataburger today," or something. Somebody got me out of the office that day because they knew I was going to be upset when that happened. Well, and I was. And then when I saw who came in and kind of replaced you, I was even more like, did this really just happen?
Yeah.
Are we really doing this?
When I went and I visited our friend Dave Moreland, he was down the hall at KWOI, and I said, "Dave, this is it. I've been fired." He goes, "You've been fired?" And I forget how I phrased it, but he thought that he was fired. I go, no, Dave, not you. This is me.
Yeah.
Of course not. He's a Hall of Famer, too.
Yeah.
Hall of Fame broadcaster.
I really enjoyed working with Dave. Dave was very kind to me after you were let go. He knew that you and I were good buddies, and he knew I was going to be upset. And at that time, I was sharing responsibilities between both of your radio stations and was sort of primarily assigned to KOOI and just doing a little bit to help you on the ranch.
Yeah, they split that up, and it was, and Dave had pushed that at a programmers meeting, and man, people got angry. I mean, some people got angry, like, well, what? He needs to give up this. And they go, well, he is giving this up, but he still can hang on to this.
Yeah.
And okay, fine.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed that time. I really enjoyed working for Dave on, at the time it was Sunny 106.5 KOOI. Now I think it's Jack FM, but I really enjoyed learning from him. He had a different style than you did. He'd been programming a little bit longer. You and I were kind of doing X's and O's in the dirt as you had incredible experience as a music director, but you were kind of getting your legs under programming, where Dave had been doing both for a really long time, and he had a set way of doing things.
Dave had been he was a program director until last year in this market for for almost 40 years. When I came here in 84, I remember, 84, and I remember listening to the old KTYL, and I'm going, man, this is a pro sounding station. Mm-hmm. Everything snapped into place, the jingles, the airtime. I'm going, wow.
Yeah.
This isn't some little cowtown radio station. This sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
So and the thing with Dave, he's always been one of these folks that you can program and deal with people and do it in a straight, direct, kind manner.
Yeah, he
and still be successful.
Yeah. He wasn't as playful with me as you were, because we had developed that friendship over time, right? But he was so kind and gave me really great feedback. I got better working with him.
Sure.
Just because I had new notes from somebody else that I respected. And I got to say, the music that Dave had on Sunny 106.5 for that year and a half or 2 years that I worked underneath him, that was my favorite sound of adult contemporary I think ever. He had this really great mix of Fleetwood Mac, Ace, who else did music from the 80s like Billy Joel, and it all was woven together so well with even contemporary stuff from Kelly Clarkson and Carrie Underwood at the time, but it had a sound.
Yeah.
It had a very specific sound, and it had a smoothness. It was so solid. And when he left, Drew Laborde started overseeing all four stations in the building, and I was sort of given this task to work underneath Drew to make the music brighter. They wanted to make it more sunny and less cloudy was the term that they used. I know your face. I know I made a similar face because I thought it sounded so good.
Was that
Dave.
The description really?
Yes. From Ginger.
I hate that, because I've been in those situations where, when I was doing country, and it was, we don't want it to sound so country. And I remember saying to the general manager at the place that I worked at the time, I said, well, here's the deal. If this country station is going to sound like Restless Heart, i.e. pop music all the time, you're going to lose people.
Yeah.
And I basically got stared at, and I said, fine, I'll do what I can. And I really didn't do that much, and they stayed off my butt. And, that was it.
Well, and now that it's Jack FM, I think that's a pretty good testimony to what happened by changing that sound.
Sure.
And we'll talk about that on another episode, because I could go in deep on my feelings about that. With respect of everyone that I worked with, I think there are times, and I'll leave it at this, I think there are times in your career when you have an idea about something or a feeling in your core that is this is the way forward. Yeah. And when you're working for someone that disagrees, whether they have a core feeling about it or not, they disagree, but they're the person in charge.
Sure.
Those were the times when I realized it was time for me to leave.
Yeah.
Because I felt so deeply and so strongly. I care too much about what I felt was right. And it's not that I can't be swayed or influenced or taught. Obviously, you and Dave both taught me a lot.
Yeah.
But I just knew at my core, this wasn't going to work.
Sure.
And I was like, I got to go somewhere else.
I've had situations like that, and it was, the first time I was probably 23 when I was in Austin, Minnesota, and this speaks negatively to the bunch there at the time, because family owned, great place, but I felt that I needed to learn.
Yeah.
And I contacted a guy named Pat Martin in Wisconsin. And that's maybe going to come up next episode.
Perfect.
Should we wrap this up?
Yeah, you want to do a lightning round? Was that how we're going to wrap things up?
I think we are. I'm going to ask you some things like, what is your favorite food right now?
Oh, right at this moment? Tiba Grill. It's Mediterranean food. It's a gyro from Tiba Grill. It's amazing. I love it.
It's going to be tacos for me. That's what Rosanna's making for me tonight. Her homemade tacos are just incredible.
Okay.
What's your favorite movie and/or / television show at this very moment?
At this moment? Ooh. Can I give you 2 answers?
Absolutely.
So, like, what I go to for comfort is Ted Lasso.
Yes.
But my favorite movie, because I just think it was such a powerfully, and it shook me when I watched it. And I was like, yes, that's how I feel, was Barbie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
For this year, this time period, Barbie.
A sub question on Ted Lasso. The Roy Kent speech where he talks about Isaac. I still get weepy saying it.
Yeah, that show makes me laugh. It makes me cry. It inspires me, which is why I watch it again and again.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I have those shows that like I'll.
And the writing is so good. Man, they've got good writers on that show. There are so many jokes that are woven in like through multiple episodes. And
Laughing Liam.
Yes. And so many fast quips
yes.
that it's like if you're not paying attention, like if you're also like doing laundry or something and you just have it on in the background, you'll miss it, which is another reason why I watch it again and again, because I always find something new in it. It's that well done.
So when you're working out, and we both do our things. Okay, so do you do music? I watch TV. I watch science fiction. I'm going through the Star Trek series right now, but what do you do?
Oh, well, so I've been lifting weights. So when I'm doing that, there's just background music on and I'm talking to people. But when I'm by myself and I'm like doing a long walk, I have a variety of things. I'm an Audible listener.
Okay.
So that's like
books,
recorded books. So I really like personal development, but I've gone deep down into the fairy realm on fantasy romance series written by Sarah J. Maas, and she's in the news right now because she just had a new book release. So lately, I've been listening to her latest book, House of Flame and Shadow, in the Crescent City series.
I was going to say something about the last book I read, and I can't, and I'm trying to remember. It's the TV show that Brie Larson did where she is...
Lessons in Chemistry.
Yes. I love the book. I mean,
you did read the book.
Yeah.
Oh, I should read it then.
It's
that was such a good show.
And the thing is, it's almost note for note on what they did the TV show. But they fill it in as all books do.
Nice.
You know what? I think this is it. I think we're going to call this an episode of the Unknown Morning Show. I'm Chuck McKinley.
I'm Mandee Montana.
This has been another episode of the Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
And I'm Chuck McKinley.
This is our show to explore radio,
podcasting,
gear,
and the gearheads that use the gear,
and making money with a hot mic,
and other stuff in between.
We'd love for you to follow us on social media as well. Follow us on Facebook at The Unknown Morning Show and Instagram at The Unknown Morning Show. See us on YouTube at The Unknown Morning Show.
Thank you for listening to The Unknown Morning Show.
I'm Mandee Montana.
I'm Chuck McKinley. And remember, be kind and rewind.